So to understand what we talk about when we're talking about the uninterrupted work cycle, I think we still need to understand a little bit about the prepared environment, what we call the prepared environment. So I'm going to actually insert that a little bit first. You might hear that quite often when we talk about the prepared environment. And what does that mean? It means an environment that the teacher prepares and sets up for the child. And so when you walk into the classroom, you'll see areas of the classroom, the sensorial area, the math area, the language area, the practical life area. And in each of those areas, you'll have the array of materials that Ms. Suli was talking about. So that allows the child to work independently because they choose those activities on their own. Okay, so now we go into the uninterrupted work cycle. With the materials set out for them and the freedom for them to choose on their own, the children have a very important uninterrupted work period. Dr. Maria Montessori discovered that children, when left to their own devices, with a careful balance of freedom and responsibility, displayed a distinct 3-hour cycle of work. And we see this in the classroom over and over again. In the Montessori classroom, at all age levels, an extended work period free of interruptions by the adults in the program offers children the opportunity to work at their own pace. The uninterrupted work period is vitally important, as that is when the building of coordination, concentration, independence, and order, and the assimilation of information are able to occur. So when we talk about who's interrupting the child, we really mean, like we said, the adult. So in a traditional program, which is very teacher-directed, the teacher is the one to direct the child's work. We are all familiar, most of us, if we haven't grown up in a Montessori environment, that we have a math period and everyone is doing math at the same time, or an art period when we're all working on the same art project at the same time. In a Montessori classroom, when you walk in, you'll see children working at very many different tasks all at the same time. Even in an elementary program, you might walk in and see a child working on math while a small group lesson is being given on reading, and still others are having a snack break. And so they have that freedom to choose their work at their own pace and at their own time. Compare that to what some schools and what some educational programs have been trying to develop, similar in nature to Montessori, what they call the block schedules. And you might have heard that or might have experienced that. The block schedules are very different, actually, from the Montessori uninterrupted work period, where the children in a Montessori classroom are working at many different tasks at the same time. The block periods do have long periods of work time, but they're working with the same topic, the same subject. So they may have a 3-hour work period of math, for example, one stretch at a time. In a Montessori classroom, the children have the freedom to move from a math activity. When they're done, they move on to another one, a reading activity, or they may go into a quiet corner and read some books, or take out a matching activity or a puzzle map. As you see here in these slides, the pictures that Carrie has taken. So it's very different because the children are the ones to make these choices. So they explore the prepared environment and they engage with those materials of their own choosing. Again, developing independence, which is a very, very important component of a Montessori program. This time is meant to give them opportunities to enjoy the work that they love while also cultivating basic life skills, that preparation for life. While the work will look different for each age group, at all program levels, the children have ample time allotted for the uninterrupted work period, and that allows the children to develop such important work habits as self-direction, independence, time management, and it fosters a deep concentration. As parents and as adults, we tend to insert ourselves into a child's work period. We may come across a child working really intently on a piece of art that they're working. And it's just really hard for us to control ourselves and say, wow, that looks great, what are you doing? And you might have noticed the child will look up at you and there goes that opportunity because their concentration is broken. So in a Montessori classroom, The teacher's role is to really have their presence felt as lightly as possible. We may watch a child and observe them, but we really follow their lead. If they need help, they know how to ask for it. You may have your child in the preschool level coming home, and you might notice that they have been putting their hand on your shoulder or on your hip, and you might wonder, what is that all about? And that's because it's a skill that they've learned in the classroom at the preschool level, that if they want the teacher's attention, that they come up to them. And if the teacher's working with another child, they'll put their hand on the teacher's shoulder, and the teacher will then put their hand on the child's hand, indicating that they know that they're there and that they're waiting. So the child doesn't come up to them and, teacher, Miss Ulia, with a question. They'll just wait patiently for Miss Ulia to acknowledge that they know that they're there and that she'll get to them next. At the 2-year-old level, a typical morning work cycle can vary from 1 to 1.5 hours. So it's very age appropriate. We don't have them working for 3 straight hours. Children of this age tend to explore materials, and the teachers observe or quietly move through the room, assisting or redirecting as needed. There's a lot more observation at this level. During the preschool and kindergarten work period, teachers observe the behaviors of the children and invite individuals in small groups to short lessons when they see opportunities to assist the child's progress. Optimally, the majority of each morning and afternoon is devoted to self-motivated work. That's the work period that we say in the morning. And that is the busiest time of their morning. So when parents have told us that, well, my child doesn't take a nap, they are often surprised to learn that their child has had a very good long nap at school. And that's because the work that they do, maybe not long or difficult, but it is so focused and there's a lot of concentration. It takes a lot out of them. So they very often do need a nap in the afternoon, and they recharge and go into the rest of the day refreshed. And we even take breaks at the elementary level too. After lunch, there's PE, and then they work in the afternoon. At the elementary level, the work includes Montessori hands-on materials, as well as increasingly abstract, developmentally appropriate lessons. There's a longer work period in the elementary program. That's one of the reasons we begin earlier in the day at 8 o'clock. And their work period goes all the way until 11 o'clock. Now, it's not just classroom work throughout that whole time. We do take breaks. We have snack breaks, we have water breaks. During this pandemic, we have mask breaks, which the child can step out of the classroom if they want to, take off their mask, get a drink of water, but then they go back into the classroom to be masked with their peers. The teachers during this time work with the students individually and in small groups. So like I mentioned earlier, you might see the teachers giving small group lessons while other children are working independently. They collaborate as they work on tasks, that peer learning, or they work on research projects together. They manage their work expectations with their work plans. And as Andy just demonstrated, that time management that they develop from their work plans also goes along with the uninterrupted work period, because they do not need the teacher to tell them what to do. They look at their work plans, and the work plan tells them, okay, I've completed my reading activity. Now what can I do next? They have an array of activities to choose from, which they know that they must complete by the end of a certain period. But then it is their choice to move on to the next activity, knowing that they have to complete it by the end of a certain time. And it's the same thing with the preschool children, that they look around the classroom and they see all these wonderful activities, just inviting them to touch them and play with them. As Celia mentioned, they can work with them on their own as frequently as they want to, as long as they have been given an introductory lesson, and that's so that they know how to use it properly. So there are periods during this long uninterrupted work period that we notice, or Maria Montessori has identified as periods of what we call false fatigue. And that's the period when a child will come up to the teacher and just kind of wander around the classroom. I don't know what to do. And that really is often a very brief period. And the child, is just getting over a little bit of a hump, needing some direction about a new activity that they can choose. And once they get over that brief period, then they go back to their work, and you see them just refreshed and ready to keep working through that morning work period. So it looks like they're tired and it looks like they're done for the morning, but once we help them through that period, they continue working with a lot of energy throughout that morning period. One final thing that I wanted to mention is that protecting the uninterrupted work period is very important because each child deserves the opportunity to fully engross themselves in the work that captivates them. And therefore, a late arrival to the class not only takes away from that child's experience, but also disrupts the other children as well. So that's why we really talk about the importance of timely arrival in school at every level, even with the 2-year-old program. So the first aim of the prepared environment and also the uninterrupted work period, therefore, is as far as possible to render the growing child independent of the adult. And if they are independent, then our work is done.